Hello and welcome, I'm Pia and you're watching Gulf Today on NewsX World, and here are the headlines. In a setback to the US brokered ceasefire, Israel maintains that the remains of 3 people handed over by Hamas to the Red Cross in Gaza do not belong to any of the hostages. Protesters are rallying in Tel Aviv to demand the return of bodies of captives from Gaza. Families of dead hostages and activists have now held photos of loved ones taken during the horrific October 7th attacks and have called for closure and peace. US President Donald Trump is set to host his Syrian counterpart Ahmed al-Shara at the White House on the 10th of November tentatively. This will be the first ever visit by a Syrian head of state to Washington after decades of international isolation. Amid Washington's frustration with Beirut and the lack of headway being made on the disarmament of Hezbollah, US's Special Envoy for Syria, Tom Barak, has branded Lebanon a failed state. Despite a ceasefire agreement inked last year, hostilities between Israel and Lebanon continue. An IDF strike targeting Hezbollah's elite Radwan forces have hit a car in southern Lebanon's Kfar Roummane, killing 4 and wounding 3. Egypt has inaugurated its long-delayed Grand Egyptian Museum in Giza, a mega project aiming to give the country's millennia-old heritage a rich and modern display. The museum showcases 57,000 artifacts, including King Tutankhamun's treasures. The Ukrainian drone attack has hit a tanker and an oil terminal in Russia's Black Sea port of Tuapse overnight, setting fire to infrastructure. Authorities have warned that the strike could disrupt crude and refined product exports. US President Donald Trump has hailed his meeting with China's Xi Jinping in Busan, calling it a major success, stating that it brings everlasting peace along with key trade and tariff agreements. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. United States Special Envoy to Syria, Tom Barak, has stated that Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara is expected to visit Washington. Barak has also informed that during the visit, Syria would hopefully join the US-led coalition to defeat the Islamic State. This visit would mark Shara's second visit to the United States following his address to the UN General Assembly in New York in September. Since seizing power from Bashar al-Assad last December, Shara has made a series of foreign trips as his transitional government seeks to re-establish Syria's ties with world powers that had shunned Damascus during Assad's rule. With us on the broadcast is Dr. Bail Awad. He is a Middle East affairs expert. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. This is, of course, being touted as a landmark visit. The tentative date, as of now, according to officials in the United States, is the 10th of November. This will be the first visit by a Syrian head of state to the White House. What are your expectations from this meeting? The United States is, of course, expecting the al-Shara regime now to join its coalition against the Islamic State.
Well, I think what is happening in Syria is everybody knows the stories that every stakeholders, every parties have played the spoiled in the Syrian affairs since 2011, and we have seen how much the people of Syria have suffered at the hand of different organizations playing in Syria, name it, Israel, United States, Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the rest of the Arab countries who have done the havoc of the destruction of total Syria. And in fact, after the removal of the previous regime from Syria, most of the Syrian people were in jubilation that could be the changes will make Syria much better. However, for the last almost a year now, that we have seen that the Syrian situation is deteriorating by the day. Because Israel is occupying extra land in Syria, more than 650 square kilometers Israel have taken of the south of Syria, and that the protection that this regime is a terrorist state, and they wanted to secure their security. And we know that it is the oil and the water that Israel is also on land that they wanted to expand at the coast of the Syria, and they have destroyed totally the Syrian, infrastructure, military bases, and everything of that. The United States president met with al-Shara in Saudi Arabia, and he said that he will give him a chance to see and build up Syria. And I think it's a high time now that the government of Syria should be formed, the parliament should be formed, fair election should be held, and an accountable government should come to power, because Syrian people cannot suffer. And it's the United States who's claiming that they wanted to fight terrorist organization. I think it's a high time also we should say that this duplicity of the United States of dealing with Al-Qaeda, with even Daesh and all these terrorist organizations, nothing but just a farce.
Indeed, as you've pointed out, that Ahmed al-Shara was initially wanted by the United States of America just a couple of years back. In fact, the US State Department tweet is still up on X, which of course highlights the duplicity of the US administration. But for the people of Syria at large who have seen elections take place recently as well, people argue that it's just optics. But what does it mean for the people living over there, that they won't have to live in isolation anymore?
Well, I think the Syrian people have paid a very hefty price because of these people of the regional competition who will be having control in Syria. And I think the responsible for all this mess definitely is Turkey, who have played a major role, and Israel at the same hand. Both of them made Syria look like a players. They've been catching it from both sides. So Syria have been squeezed like a sandwich between the two, because Israel wanted to disintegrate Syria, make it into a weaker state. Even Turkey wanted to have the maximum land. So what we have noticed decades ago was that there was a conflict between Israel and Iran, who have the control of Syria. And now what we are noticing is more Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Israel, and Russia, and the United States are playing the major role inside Syria, plus the against Israel and Turkey in the other hand. Now, the people of Syria, the food is very, the unemployment is the highest, and the inflation is very high. Economy is very bad. So what we need is aid from all the Arab countries who can rebuild Syria, rehabilitate the people of Syria. At the moment, the people of Syria are in a very dire situation, and the situation is deteriorating. And I think there was a demonstration even inside Damascus yesterday, where people were asking for why the rising of the electricity bills on the people. They cannot afford to do it. So I think there is a revival. The people of the new interim government is trying to meet the expectation of the Syrian people. But I think that it's a horrendous task, and it will take many, many years for the Syrian people, a generation, to revive and recover what's going on and what happened to Syria.
Indeed, sir. I'll just come to Israel in a bit since you've mentioned it. But in the meantime, we're also getting some more information as far as Syria is concerned. We're now learning that the U.S. Special Envoy to Syria, Tom Barrack, has stated that the West should not go there regarding its involvement in the politics of the Levant and the Middle East, adding that it needs to learn from past mistakes of imposing centralized models of a colonial mandate. Barrack has added that the Trump administration has gone to lessons learned from past treaties and wants to try something new by bolstering the region's power in energy, artificial intelligence and microchip manufacturing, shifting the idea of prosperity from just pumping oil to creating portfolios for the next regime as well. Listen in to what he stated.
We're living in a really difficult zip code. You have the three ethno-religious dominant religions in the world living here, the Middle East. We also have 23 of the most viable foreign terrorist organizations in the world, 18 of them within our zip code. So we're fighting all of these counter winds at a moment where you have a president of the United States who happens to be the leader saying enough. 100 years of this confusion, of these old thoughts, of these old ideas, and people not moving off of them, when you have the most dominant region in the world, if you combine capital with fossil fuels, with resourceful people, has got to end. And that's where he is. That's what we're trying to do.
Meanwhile, Barak has also emphasized that the priority was to stop the killings, allow humanitarian aid to enter the enclave, and ensure a vital marrying of interests between Palestinians and Israelis, which the world, including the US and the Gulf, is working towards. Stay with us on the broadcast is Dr. Wael Awad. I, of course, mentioned in this particular information that the key priority of the United States is allowing humanitarian aid to enter Palestine, ensuring marrying of interests. But this approach by the current administration of the United States to not just, at least at the outset, what it's ostensibly maintaining, not to look at, these states being oil pumping nations, but to also ensure development in energy, artificial intelligence, microchip manufacturing. How do you view this sort of forward-looking approach? Whether it catalyzes or not remains to be seen.
Well, I think under the American administration, Mr. President Trump, currently we have noticed that President Trump is having the upper hand in many of the regional crises. Take it and name it, or international. It's in Russia, maybe in Syria, in the Middle East, Israel and Gaza, in South Asia and Southeast Asia. So he is trying to promote himself as the peacemakers, and he's a deal maker as well. So therefore, wanted to see more of his involvement directly in the conflict in this region. And having said that, I would say that ever since the ceasefire have been broke by President Trump, we noticed that the American president putting lots of pressure on Israel not to violate, not to end this truce of ceasefire, and Hamas has been handing over all the dead bodies of the remaining hostages that they have been exchanging with the Israelis. And I think what was lacking, and because we could see the amount of the violation by the Israeli army, which have been firing and killing innocent Palestinians who are living in the open. More than 2.5 million people are living with the torn tents inside Gaza, and the winter is approaching there. And they're talking of getting the aids into Gaza, and what we are getting is just a piecemeal of what's exactly required. You require the minimum of 1,000 convoy a day for the Palestinian to survive. And now what you are witnessing here is a very limited allowance to allow it into Gaza, because Israel feels that the Hamas is not fulfilling its own commitment to the ceasefire. And not even today, only they have allowed certain amount of heavy machines to remove all the debris. Imagine you wanted to find that under this debris, under the 10,000s of dead body of the Palestinian, an Israeli dead body inside. And with your bare hand, you don't have the minimum equipment for doing so. So how do you expect them to do that? I mean, that is where the whole world is focusing on the Israelis, prisoners, detainees or dead bodies, while nobody speaks of the 10,000 Palestinians who have been under the debris. And I think this is a very inhuman what's going on in the region. What we required Gaza is seriously more than the American first policy that President Trump is doing, is to make sure that this war does not break again and the Palestinians get their respect as a human as much as the rest of the world.
Indeed, I want to come back to Syria, because there are, of course, murmurs that, under US pressure, Israel and Syria are negotiating some sort of a security framework. In fact, when Ahmed al-Sharaa went to New York for the UNGA, he'd hinted at this, but at the same time, he'd also sort of downplayed the prospect of recognizing Israel formally under the Abraham Accords. He's pointed out to raids and strikes and incursions that have taken place in Syria as well. Do you think such a security framework could come about, and what would its implications be on the Middle East at large and the security balance in the Middle East?
If you ask my personal opinion, I'll give you my personal opinion. First of all, Barak is nothing but a stooge of the Israeli government. And what he is He is a very arrogant person, the special envoy of the United States into Syria. He doesn't respect these countries as an independent state. He wanted to impose on the Arab world, especially on Syria, and and Lebanon, by the way, that this is what Israel dictate is giving to him, that he should be implemented in the true spirit, which means that there will be no Syrian army, there will be no military army presence near Israel, there will be no allowing of any group to regroup inside Syria, there will be no attack in Israel. And the similar things, he's carrying the same story to the Lebanese government, where he's telling them that dismantling of Hezbollah weapon is one of the priority for Lebanon to be accepted. Then at the second hand, when he comes and he gives you the list of what they want from Lebanon, they wanted to reoccupy the south of Lebanon, they wanted to take access to the water by Israel. And the problem, which nobody understanding the actual scenario in the region, is that United States does not want Israel to integrate into the Arab world. So you're calling Abraham Accord for what? Israel and the American are making sure that Israel will remain the dominant force inside Syria, inside the region, and they wanted to make sure that militarily, politically, economically, and with the support of the United States, is totally Israel. So there is no questions of integration. If you wanted to live in peace in the region and to coexist side by side, you need to take everybody's also in consideration. We will provide you with the security, but the security does not mean that you have to disintegrate these countries to occupy and conquer the region. The Israelis, extremist parties, including Netanyahu himself, till date, they are openly saying Israel is the great Israel is from Euphrates to Nile, which means Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, Sinai Peninsula, and 1/3 of Saudi Arabia. So what are we planning? What are you planning for the region? Are you planning to continue wars in the region, or you wanted to have a peace? I think it's a high time we should address the issues in its true spirit. And also, spade is a spade. There is no question that the American can impose Abraham Accord even on the Syrian people. Even if the regime tomorrow change, the Syrian people will not accept, because Israel is still occupying the Syrian Golan, which they have already annexed it, and now they're occupying 650 square kilometers, and they're openly saying we will not give it back. Then how you want to achieve peace inside Syria? Tomorrow, Israel will say it's the only democracy in the region. They will give it to the Knesset. The same thing they give the Syrian occupied territory. They said, we need a resolution democratically. The Knesset should decide whether should we hand over to Syria or no. Forget it. There is no question they will hand over any territories. Israel is now at the moment wanted to expand, and it's a good time for them to occupy as much as land in the region and create havoc. And that's how Netanyahu will survive politically.
All right, Dr. Vailavat, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your perspective and analysis with us. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to what's taking place in Tel Aviv. We're now learning that dozens have gathered under the banner of Enough of War, demanding the return of the remaining slain hostages still held by Hamas. Meanwhile, families and activists have held photos of their loved ones taken during the 7th October attacks in 2023. They've called for closure and peace. This rally comes after Hamas has returned 20 surviving hostages that were still in his custody when the fragile ceasefire deal was inked, and it's commenced handing over the remains of those killed. Demonstrators have urged Israeli leaders to prioritize the return of every single body and to end what they call an endless cycle of blood. Police has maintained a strong presence as emotions ran high in the heart of Tel Aviv. In fact, listen in to what some of the protesters have had to say.
אז באתי לכאן היום שאף אחד לא ישכח את עוז, שאף אחד לא ישכח את החללים. המלחמה עדיין אומנם ברגיעה, אבל עד שלא נחזיר את כולם, אין כאן סגירה ואין מנוחה. אנחנו פה מאז שהיו כמות מאוד גדולה של חטופים. עכשיו נשארנו עם מעט, וחשוב להמשיך לתמוך במשפחות, וחשוב להעביר לממשלה שצריך להחזיר את כולם, עד האחרון שבהם.
כרגע נשארו 11 חללים שהמשפחות שלהם פה באי ודאות ולא יכולות לחזור למעגל החיים שלהם ולחיים הרגילים שלהם. חשוב שהם יקבלו קבורה ראויה והמשפחות יזכו להתחלה לא שלמה אמנם, אבל חדשה, שיוכלו לחזור לחיים ולשקם את עצמם עד כמה שאפשר.
With us on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Kuperwasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Of course, some rather heart-wrenching scenes coming in from the heart of Tel Aviv. We've seen the families of hostages come out as well, calling for an end to what they call is an endless cycle of bloodshed. There is a lot of trauma around the October 7th terrorist attack, the 2 years of war that's taken place as well. But apart from this trauma shaping the government's policies, I wanted to understand from you what are the priorities of the Israeli people on the ground right now?
Well, good morning. First of all, I think the highest priority is really to bring back the bodies of the 11 remaining hostages that are still in Gaza. And this is still a part of the first phase of the plan that President Trump has put forward. We want to see it implemented. Once this is over, then the other issue is to make sure that Hamas is disarmed. That's the second phase of the plan. And until now, Hamas refuses to follow this part of the plan. So this is going to be the next challenge. And we shall have to, for that purpose, to see that the International Stabilization Force is being built. And there is a group of Palestinian technocrats that can take over from Hamas. Mm-hmm. This has not been done yet. So we are all waiting to see all of that happening. And making sure that Gaza would not serve as a jumping board for further terror attacks in the future. Mm. All of that has to happen once the hostages are brought back.
Indeed, and speaking of the hostages itself, we've recently learned that the remains of 3 people that Hamas handed over to the Red Cross earlier do not belong to any of the hostages. So realistically speaking, what's needed to end this endless cycle of bloodshed, as the protesters are pointing out?
Looking at that, this endless cycle of bloodshed is really strange. This is a bloodshed originated by Hamas. They took the initiative on October 7th and massacred 1,200 Israelis, and that's what led to Israeli response. It's not a cycle of bloodshed. If Hamas disarms, then there's not going to be any further violence in Gaza. What we need to see now is that Hamas would accept this. And unfortunately, we are still hearing Hamas speaking about staying in power, and that's the problem that prevents us from moving forward right now.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other rather crucial updates at this time near Israel's northern border with Lebanon. We're now learning that in southern Lebanon, an Israeli airstrike has killed 4 people, wounded 3 others. This information according to Lebanon's health ministry. The strike hit a car in Kfar Roummane in the Damatiyeh district. Israeli military sources have indicated that the drone strike targeted a member of Hezbollah's elite Radwan force. The incident comes nearly a year after a ceasefire was declared between Israel and Lebanon, ending months of cross-border firing. But despite that truce, cross-border strikes are taking place. The main bone of contention over here is, of course, Hezbollah's refusal to disarm. Meanwhile, Hezbollah is under pressure from both within Lebanon and from the United States in order to disarm, but it has remained rather resolute on its stance. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Kuperwasser. Interestingly, there's a recent statement that has come in from U.S. Special Envoy to Syria, Tom Barak. Washington is rather frustrated with Beirut, especially regarding the lack of headway being made as far as the disarmament of Hezbollah is concerned. We'd seen talks pick up just about 2 months back, but nothing has taken place on the ground. Nothing tangible has happened as far as the disarmament of Hezbollah is concerned. Tom Barak has branded Lebanon as a failed state. To what extent would you concur?
Well, unfortunately, I have to agree with Mr. Barak. It's Mr. Barak. The situation in Lebanon is that the government has endorsed a certain plan to disarm Hezbollah that was presented by the military, but does nothing in order to implement it. And so the plan is just a nice piece of paper, and that's it. And on the ground, Hezbollah keeps regrouping and rearming itself.
Indian, I wanted to understand from you, we do know that Israel has been successful in snuffing out Hezbollah's top leadership, but still, as you've mentioned, these forces are regrouping, they're still operating. How does this take place? From where do they get the funds to do so?
Of course, everything they have comes from Iran. They are a proxy of Iran, and they are financing all their activities and rearming themselves with the weapons they get from Iran. It's much more difficult for them to do that today compared with the past, when they had Syria under Assad cooperating with this effort. Now this bridge has been broken, but they managed to smuggle weapons, and they managed to bring in funding from Iran through all kinds of ways. And this allows them to still operate and maintain their stubborn approach to the demand of dismantling of disarming.
Indeed, and one last question I wanted to pose to you. We're also now getting to know that Donald Trump will be hosting his Syrian counterpart Ahmed al-Shara tentatively on the 10th of November at the White House. This is, of course, a crucial visit because this is the first ever visit by a Syrian head of state to the White House. It's also taking place after decades of international isolation of Syria. What are your expectations from this meeting? Because we do know that the US is applying considerable amount of pressure on Syria in order to negotiate a security deal with Israel.
Well, I think that what we expect is that this would lead to some agreement between us and the Syrians with the American auspices that would make sure that Syria doesn't pose a threat to Israel's security. And that would mean that there are no terror organizations deployed in southern Syria, and no weapons that can threaten Israel are deployed over there. And that also that would mean security for the minorities in Syria, primarily the Druze who were subjects for a terrible massacre a couple of months ago.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that they are safe. And if that is going to be the outcome of this visit in the White House of President Shara, then this is going to be a nice achievement and would reflect the fact that Shara wants to see Syria reconstructed, and for that he needs the West and he needs the United States. And the outcome of that should be that the relationships between Israel and Syria are going to be quiet and peaceful.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time sharing your perspective and analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to what's taken place in Egypt. The Grand Egyptian Museum has officially opened its doors in Giza. This is the largest archaeological museum in the world dedicated to a single civilization. The launch attracts international dignitaries, including German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier and King Philippe of Belgium, as well as Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. And leaders from Arab countries have also attended the opening, led by Saudi's Culture Minister Prince Badr bin Abdullah, Omani Crown Prince Thayazin, and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has inaugurated the museum, calling it a new chapter in history. Shafts of light have illuminated the museum and nearby pyramids with drones. The event also saw a musical performance linking Cairo with Tokyo, Paris and New York. The museum spans 490,000 square meters and showcases over 57,000 artifacts featuring treasures of King Tutankhamun across 7,500 square meters. Another major highlight is the 4,600-year-old solar boat of Pharaoh Khufu. The museum's opening was delayed by political turmoil and the pandemic, but it now stands as Egypt's gift to the world, showcasing its ancient civilization. Listen in to remarks made by the Egyptian president.
واليوم ونحن نحتفل معا بافتتاح المتحف المصري الكبير نكتب فصلا جديدا من تاريخ الحاضر والمستقبل في قضية هذا الوطن العريق.
Well, viewers, with that, it's a wrap on Gulf Today. We'll continue to track these developments very closely. In the meantime, we're tipping into a quick short break.